All right, hi there. These comments, I'm going to just call you the king. And I just read your integrated writing practice test number 1. I'm going to make some comments right now. So as I go through each paragraph, I'll make some corrections. So we have here the reading passage and the lecture talk mainly about arranging meetings to succeed in business. According to the reading passage and the lecture, maybe put a comma here, many things will help, I'm going to say here maybe, a business succeed. And you're kind of repeating that same thing. But the question is this what it mainly talks about? So I'm not sure that you really have the whole idea here. So if you want to just say the reading passage discusses 3 specific ways businesses can become more efficient, and then the lecture opposes these 3 points, I would say okay. There's no problem with being general like that, but once you bring up this specific idea here, then that means you have to mention the other points also. If you look at the different paragraphs in the reading passage, the purpose of this paragraph is to talk about the fact that employees should attend all company meetings. This next paragraph is saying that employees should read all of the documents that they get for their jobs. And then the last idea is employees should not separate the steps in the writing process. These are 3 specific things. So if you talk about meetings here, you then have to mention the other 2 points as well and then show how the lecture is different from those ideas. So let me give you an example introduction here. So here's just one example here. Take a look at this. So it says, for businesses to be successful, the reading passage recommends, and maybe if you want, I can make this a little bit bigger. Can you see that more? So it says, for businesses to be successful, the reading passage recommends that all employees participate in all meetings, read all the materials, and bypass the steps of the writing process when writing reports, but the lecture questions the efficiency of these suggestions. So my point is, once you mention about attending all meetings, then you need to mention the other 2 points in the reading passage as well, and that exactly captures what the main ideas are. So I think that your introduction doesn't entirely frame, I think, or discuss what the main points of the reading passage are. Okay, so now our next paragraph. Say, first of all, the reading passage mentions you might say here, should attend all meetings. This is important. So that they can maybe discuss issues you can say to help workers succeed in their jobs. And here or not, you say on the other side. Now if you see mentions here, you want to use present here. Keep it all balanced. So you'll say the lecture says Okay, on the other side, the lecture says that not all, you might want to say companies should limit the number of meetings you want to say here maybe should not take more than 60 minutes. You got to end your sentence so you don't have a run-on here. Say, furthermore, instead of having meetings, the speaker suggests that these issues be discussed through, I think it is, let's go back to the lecture, see what it says. Get it from the horse's mouth, right? I think it's saying phone calls and emails, am I right? So this is the key here. Limit the number of meetings you schedule. So it's saying try very hard to avoid meetings. Politely it says if it's not, make clear you can only stay for the first 60 minutes. It says you can deal with most issues through email or a quick phone call, right? So then we go back here. The speaker suggests that these issues be discussed through phone calls and emails, maybe both of which are a more efficient use of employees' time. So I think we're good with this paragraph. So here we have second, reading. Notice employees should provide with supplementary materials, reading all documents in their entirety. So you're having some grammatical problems. I would say here, states that employees, I'm going to say be provided with supplementary materials. These workers should read all the documents in their entirety. However, good transition word, by the way. However, the lecture responds. Remember, you're using states present, right? It's not good to switch from, in this case, if you look here, you're switching from states to responded. We don't want to do that. We want to be consistent. However, the lecture responds that in order to succeed in business, in business meetings, about the meetings, even if it comes directly from the boss, because you're misunderstanding what is being said here. We've got to go back to the lecture here. So, it's not really talking about meetings here. Let's look at it. Another way to become more efficient is you don't need to read the full text of everything you come across in the course of your work, even if it comes directly from the boss. Though reading a long article from cover to cover might make you feel productive, it might not be the best use of your time. Most likely, only a very small part of that article is vital to your work. So maybe you need to remember the big ideas, not the intricate details, or maybe you need only to find one or two examples that illustrate a particular larger point. Once you start reading the text, make it a point to search for what's important while skipping sections that are less important. Now here, where is the meeting thing coming from? I don't see anything in the lecture that's talking about this, right? So I think a lot of this information you've written here is just simply not all entirely accurate. So there's two problems going on right now. I think first of all, you're having some problems with your language use, which means because of your vocabulary and your grammar limitations, you're not accurately paraphrasing this information. Now, if you were paraphrasing it correctly, here's what you would say. When you get to discussing the lecture, you'll say, if you want to talk about the lecture, you'll say this: workers do not have to read reports entirely according to the speaker in the lecture because it might be a misuse of time. According to him, only small portions of each report are probably important. He thinks that focusing on main ideas is a more efficient way of reading the report. That's what you want to say about the lecture when it comes to how it disagrees with the reading passage in terms of the importance of reading materials. So what you did was basically misrepresent the information that you have listened to. You didn't accurately paraphrase that information. So this part here is leading you in the wrong direction. Let's go to the last one here. Finally, the reading passage mentions, you want to say here, that employees should write reports and follow You're still talking about meetings here. I don't get it. Let me go back, make sure we're on the same page here. Let's look at the last point. It says here, two main employees, when they're assigned to write a report or proposal, pretend like they're still in college, and the request to write the perfect document will attempt to use all the required stages in the writing process. These employees should not try to separate the steps in the writing process because it is simply too time-consuming. They should write the document all at once. So I don't get it. Where are you getting the meeting thing from? That's what's confusing me here. You're saying the reading passage mentions employees should write reports and follow all steps and use time to cover all information about the meeting. It doesn't say anything about the meeting in the reading passage, right? So otherwise, the lecture, again, if you say this is present, then this should also be present, right? You want to say otherwise, the lecture provides certain ways instead of writing everything in the meeting, like you want to say maybe here using academic methods to write and use outlines to write main ideas, important issues during the meeting. To conclude, these some tips that might be helpful to make the meetings more powerful and productive. But let's look at what you wrote here, right? Let's compare it to the sample here. Here's the model essay I will give to you. Ultimately, the lecture casts doubt on the reading passage by stating that having frequent and long meetings, reading all reports in detail, and writing reports all at once will in fact make businesses less efficient and consequently less successful. So how is this different from what you wrote? You know what I'm saying? Let's put them together. Let's compare. So what do you see between this one and this one? Do you notice how this writer says the lecture casts doubt? Notice how you don't mention either the reading passage or the lecture. You don't mention either one of those. So what does that mean? That it almost sounds like you're making your own opinion at the end of this essay. It sounds like you're making some kind of argument, which is not what you need to do here. So you want to make sure that you name the sources that you're using, especially when you get to the conclusion or the end of the essay. That's going to be important. Remember here, it's not just to succeed in business meetings, it's to succeed in business, right? To succeed in business, there's really three main assertions, I think, that the reading and the lecture discuss. One main assertion is the importance of reading materials and business success. Another one is the importance of meetings and how that relates to business success. The third tip focuses on writing and how employees should write the documents. That's another idea regarding business success according to both the reading and the lecture, right? Okay, so here, going back to that conclusion again, I don't think this helps. These tips, what tips? See, you should actually paraphrase the information a little bit more completely here. Okay, so now let's take a look at your score here, and then I'm going to give you a sample essay so you can kind of see where you are and why. Okay, so let's go to the integrated writing score here. I don't think you're going to get in the 4 range for sure. I'm going to put, I think you're between 2 and 3 here. I'm going to put you at as a high to 2.75 out of 18. So I think here you have not demonstrated an understanding of how the information in the lecture is connected to the information in the reading passage. In other words, you have a misunderstanding of what's going on. That's the idea that you kept focusing around meetings in different parts of your response when that's not what the focus was in the reading passage or the lecture. That kind of led you down the wrong area. All right, so hold on. Let me get a piece of paper here so I can give you a score. Okay, so I'm going to record this, or at least, yeah, write this down. So I'm going to put you right now 2.75 out of 5, 18 points out of 30. For the purposes of our class, if you go into the syllabus and take a look at it here, I think, okay, your writing is, here we go. So 2.75 here is going to put you at 73% out of 100, right? So then the question is, what could you do? How could you approach this type of writing? So let's take a look at the sample. This essay I'm going to read here, this student will get 5.5 out of 5 or 30 points out of 30. For businesses to be successful, the reading passage recommends that all employees participate in all meetings, read all the materials, and bypass the steps of the writing process when writing reports, but the lecture questions the efficiency of these suggestions. Now, this writer starts with the lecture and then the reading passage, but you don't have to do that. You can start with the reading and then the lecture. Either way is okay. So first, the professor claims that the number of employee meetings should be limited and short. According to him, meetings longer than 60 minutes might be unproductive since workers usually stop paying attention, especially if leaders spend too much time covering introductory topics. He recommends that instead of calling a meeting, workers should try to deal with issues using emails or making phone calls. In addition, they should either decline going to the meeting or inform participants that they will leave the meeting after 60 minutes. However, the author in the reading passage argues that companies need to schedule as many meetings as possible since they're an excellent way of dealing with problems and staying current with modern work-related technology. Second, workers who do not have to read reports entirely according to the speaker in the lecture because it might be a misuse of time. According to him, only small portions of each report are probably important. He thinks that focusing on main ideas is a more efficient way of reading a report. In contrast, the reading states that reading materials given to employees will help them perform better at work, and that it is recommended that they read them completely instead of primarily looking for main ideas, as the professor suggests in the lecture. Lastly, to help employees become more efficient writers, the professor suggests that they follow the steps of the writing process. When it comes to writing reports, the professor explains that workers should not initially try to write imperfect and complete sentences since it will take too long to complete the reports. Instead, for the sake of saving time, he proposes to make an outline, write a quick draft, and finally revise and correct the mistakes. However, the reading passage states that reports should be written all at once, since separating the steps in the writing process wastes time. Ultimately, the lecturer casts doubt on the reading passage by stating that having frequent and long meetings, reading all reports in detail, and writing reports all at once will in fact make businesses less efficient and consequently less successful. All right, and there we go. That's the model. So here's what you wrote right here, and I think I gave you the score of 73 on this one. And what do you do? How do you get better? So for you, I think I have two different points of analysis I'd like to bring out. So one of them, I think, is your vocabulary. You have a limited vocabulary, and that's preventing you from fully, successfully paraphrasing and summarizing the information. Because the only way you can do a good summary is you have to have a good command of the language. That means you have to use a lot of synonyms instead of using the words directly. So that's one area. The other area is your limitations in grammar. So my advice is spend a lot of time over the next 2 or 3 months working in the vocabulary and the grammar portions of my course. That's going to greatly strengthen your language use, which ultimately will help you become a much better speaker and writer of American English. You want to be more specific? Then study vocabulary lesson number 3, vocabulary lesson number 4, vocabulary lesson number 5, and vocabulary lesson number 6. And then in the grammar part of my course, you're doing it already. Keep going through the lessons as indicated by your diagnostic pretest, and I even recommend keeping a grammar journal. A grammar journal means you get out a sheet of notebook paper and you start writing down some of what you're learning in the lessons I'm teaching you, and put these down in a separate sheet of paper so you can review them later on. For example, if you're studying one of my lessons on adjective clauses, you might write a sample sentence in your journal that uses an adjective clause from the lesson. Then you can read that, remember that later on. All right, anyway, thank you very much for completing the assignment, and work hard. My advice is you probably should complete 2 or 3 integrated writing practice tests before doing the final exam. That will give you a chance to make a few more adjustments before we take the final. If you do complete some integrated writing practice tests right now, they will not affect your grade. You'll get them graded. My TA will give you a grade, some comments, but I will not write these into InGrades, so they will not be used against you. It will only help prepare you for the integrated writing final exam. And ultimately, my true purpose is to help prepare you for academic writing at the graduate level. All right? The King. Anyway, thank you very much and have a great day.